Hello, Reanimated fans. Welcome to this week's episode. I am H.A. Conrad here as always with my intrepid and awesome co-host Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Yo, hey, hi.
We are a podcast that reviews and talks about things undead and reanimated. And right now we're in to our reviews of Season 9 of The Walking Dead. We're going to be talking about episode 5 and 6 of that season. But ahead of that, we have some news items to chat about. First up is Tesla's Cybertruck, which looks like a very weird version of the DeLorean from Back to the Future in truck box form, I guess. But had a bit of a botched unveiling. Slight, but didn't seem to be daunting to anybody who wanted it. Apparently they have 150,
150,000-ish. The thing
pre-orders.
is,
but
that
what does that
deal,
really mean?
It just means 150,000-ish people have put up $100, which is, when you look at the order form, it's 100% refundable. So it's not really like skin in the game, but it represents people who have $100 who say, I'd click that.
Yeah, but anyway, it looks kind of like some sort of zombie fighting vehicle or that kind of thing, I suppose.
It totally does, yeah. And it does, how the bed has, it looks like solar panels on top of it? Apparently you can get a version of this car that'll have charging on itself. But unfortunately, it would only add about 15 miles to your range every day. But the base level, the single motor rear wheel drive model has a 250 plus range, mile range, and can go 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds.
Cool.
And it can tow 75,000 pounds. It will do a lot of things well in a, let's say, a hypothetical zombie apocalypse scenario. So I think it's probably one of the better contenders we've seen.
So did you put down a $100 deposit? Is this what you're trying to tell me?
No. I need my $100 for things like, I don't know, food.
Coffee.
Not so much for a 2021 truck. Cool. That's not to say that I haven't put down hundreds of dollars into mini, Dungeons and Dragons miniature Kickstarters.
Well,
so, not that practical with my money, but yeah. That's a little shout out for Reaper Miniatures. They just closed out one of their Kickstarters at the $3 million mark.
Oh my goodness.
It's such good value for buying lots of minis at once. A lot of zombies in this one too. Actually, there's a zombie giant miniature. So that's going to be pretty cool.
Cool. I look forward to seeing that when you get it.
Oh, yeah.
In great news, Collider, there's a Collider article reporting that Black Summer Season 2 has been renewed by Netflix.
This is really just a headline. There's zero information.
Well, there's zero information, but the fact is this was up in the air, and I was a little bit surprised that they hadn't renewed it, because we had heard that the viewing and the review, the viewing numbers were pretty high, though they don't usually release those. So pretty excited.
In the UK. We don't even know what they were in the US, right?
Right, but still, it had pretty good reviews, and so I'm glad to see it was renewed. I enjoyed this. We both enjoyed it thoroughly, so I'm psyched to see it come back. And one of the showrunners is taking over fully. At least three of the cast are coming back. Yeah, so Rose is coming back, but also Jamie King is coming back also as a producer, I believe. So
cool.
So that'll be kind of cool to see. So I look forward to...
After she got so beat up making the first season, she wants more of a cut.
Production credit.
That's acceptable.
But I'm cool with that. And so we'll definitely be reviewing that whenever that comes out. Next up, there was an article about the original ending of Dawn of the Dead, and I had heard this before. It just that there were multiple ideas, and it was a little surprising to me, especially given the ending of the first the first Dead series for Romero, that it wasn't as bleak, and it actually felt a bit like they had tweaked the ending. So this isn't shocking to me, but what did you think? Basically, Romero ultimately decided he wanted slightly more hopeful ending, but originally it was going to be pretty gruesome endings for the entire cast.
Yeah, with everybody dead, Pete shooting himself, which he has like a moment of contemplation about that in the theatrical ending, and then Fran putting her head into the rotor blades of the helicopter on the roof. Wow, that would have been. I mean, it's even as it is, it's not like yay they're alive. It's like, oh god, what are they gonna do now? Like, it's not a uplifting ending.
No, it's not that uplifting. So, but I'm glad that it was slightly more uplifting than that, because that would have been terrible. So I think that was the right choice. And the interesting part was that apparently Romero had gotten very attached to the characters, and in part that's why he decided to give a slight amount of hope at the end. So kudos to you, George Romero. But in less hopeful news,
can I just quickly go back? I'm just glad that we still have like news breaking about George Romero more than a year after his death.
I know, but it's he's gonna live on forever, man.
He is
the zombie king. But in less hopeful news, or actually like dovetailing into what we were talking, or in continuation about what we were talking about last week, actually pretty shortly after we recorded our podcast, there was news that came out of China again about another diagnosis of bubonic plague, and this time it was a hunter who apparently ate a wild rabbit and caught the Black Plague. And all I will say is that I suspect that there's probably a lot more going on, given that these three, like, basically we now have confirmation that there are 3 victims. I feel like there's got to be more. And this is a bit concerning because, plague is not something I think we want to see spreading at this point in time, especially given the antibiotic resistance that we've seen with certain pathogens. So anyway, on that cheery note, let's talk about. I mean, what do you think? It's a little bit, and then somebody very helpfully put up an article about the history of plague in Asia, like the whole Chinese history.
That was a bit of a bloated article.
It was a bit of a bloated article, absolutely. But in any case, I think that we'll have to keep tracking this, and I really hope that it just kind of stops. But I'm a little bit concerned now. More so than I was before. Just a tad. But we'll keep tracking. In any case, the next 2 episodes are kind of doozies. For the Walking Dead Season 9, it is What Comes After, which is directed by Greg Nicotero. Story was by Scott Gimple and Matthew Negrete. But then... and following that is Who Are You Now? And that's directed by Larry Tang and written by Eddie Guzelian. And these were like, I mean, it's very, they are definitely both full of a lot of revelations. I would say that this season, again, confirmation about why I enjoyed this season so much. It really moves things along. But it's also, I feel like it really impactful. Lots of stuff to think about and unpack in this. But let's dive into what comes after. And this is, I think, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it, but this is Rick Grimes' kind of long goodbye.
Sometimes occasionally too long.
It's too long. And, the one bit of criticism I'll have for this episode is that, we always know when the flashbacks start happening that things are afoot. This was, for those of you who joined us last week or who it may have been a while, but in the previous episode, Rick was trying to draw the herd of walkers away from his people and from the settlements, and he ends up somehow getting thrown from his horse, sort of impaled by a rebar. And he is really, in bad shape. And it seems like the end is near. And, you can't help but draw some similarities between this and the Morgan situation, as you pointed out last week, Stuart, in Fear the Walking Dead. And, immediately they start off with the flashbacks.
Yeah,
And
that's the first scene of the
yeah,
episode, right? Is a flashback, and it starts this trend of him being told to wake up by people in his subconscious, as he must be languishing there for seconds, not minutes. We have to assume because of the how close the Zeds were when he
right,
passes out each time. They're never that much closer. In fact, sometimes they seem further away when he wakes up.
right.
So the
I
show is doing some tricky
right.
perspective shots, I guess.
Right. I also got to give an award to the horse because apparently that horse is just gonna not bolt
Yeah.
ever except finally at the
Until
end.
yeah.
Finally at the end. But this horse has got like some staying power. He basically manages to pull himself off the rebar, get back on the horse. But the horse, if you've got a whole pack of walkers going behind you, no matter what your rider is saying, don't you think you would bolt? I think I'd probably bolt. But in this case, he just keeps kind of going in and out of consciousness on horseback for most of this episode. They
Or
do.
off of horseback and then getting back on the horse. Like he falls off the horse at one point, and that's his wake up. And another time, he's gone into a shack to take a nap.
Yeah.
He thinks he loses the herd. Maybe I assume that's his thinking when he goes into
Yeah.
the shack. But the horse usually is waiting for him when he wakes up, which is
Yeah.
considering it had bucked him off. I don't know horses, but I assume that once a horse bucks its rider off onto some rebar and he screams and then bleeds a lot, they're not going to be like, all right, I'm just messing with you. I'll stay here and wait for you to get up
Right.
and
That's
drag
not-
yourself over here.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's not the sign of a horse that's going to stick around, right?
You'd
It's a
think.
freaked out horse. So, anyway.
Or it was a second ago.
Also, kudos to the makeup artist for making Rick Grimes look sweaty and grimy. We're always impressed by this. He's got some good grimy makeup going on here.
There's a lot of arterial-looking bleeding also coming from his midsection.
He does, which you would think would have done him in a lot more
lot sooner.
quickly. But apparently it just missed all major organs. The rebar did. And we do see, like, it was kind of nice to see him go back to his roots in the hospital. Like, we've got that going on. We have a lot of references to the sort of his beginnings. We talked about the White Horse in Atlanta and his whole thing on horseback, and that opened up the series. So I do think it was kind of a nice tie-in, an homage to that first episode to have him back on the White Horse. The one thing I was hoping, I remember originally even though I knew that obviously he wasn't in it, it would have been nice to have seen Glenn/Stephen Yoon in this, and he wasn't. And so
They had two big cameos, but yeah, I mean, one more, and I feel like this episode would have capsized.
I guess, but I mean, I would have much rather have seen him than Sasha. But
The truth comes out.
It's true, because I just don't think that added as much weight to it as I think seeing Glenn would have for Rick Grimes, especially given some of the conversations we've had.
Maggie stuff.
Yeah. So I felt, but maybe they couldn't. I mean, he's been a pretty busy actor after this, so I get it. So, but still, in any case, still fine with the cameos.
I mean, John Bernthal is always a delight,
Yeah.
and so it's
Yeah.
great that he comes back and they go back to that one of those first scenes of the entire show, sitting in their squad car, eating burgers and fries, except Rick is still all bloody, and it's
Yep.
I don't know. I like that one. The one with Sasha where he's just in that field of dead people. Yeah, I would leave it rather than take it.
Right. But I did there's also, he gets to see Herschel, and Herschel's always been this stalwart of all things good. And I did like how they handled that, and that was very clear where they were going with that. It's very much I don't know. It was nice to see him again.
Yeah, I forgot about the Herschel scene.
Yeah.
That actor didn't live much longer after that, or was this done posthumously?
I am not sure. It did look a little, I would say there was a little bit uncanny valley going on, so possibly posthumously. But it was really, it was nice to see him. And also references to Maggie and his grandkid. That was kind of cool. But the interesting, they do a few little psych out things here because you just don't know when he's conscious or not. And then there's the very realistic piece where he ends up on the bridge And it appears like everybody's coming to save the day, and they are, just not quite in that way, and not quite with that timing. I think we can probably go through the argument that there's no way that Rick Grimes would have survived such a explosion at the end. But,
It's hard to tell how far away he is from it.
yeah.
Also, who keeps sticks of dynamite on a bridge? Why?
I know, right?
Why was there so much dynamite on the bridge?
That was a good question. I was thinking the same thing.
But it was, I did, like, my favorite part of this episode is probably just Daryl like, there's one or two shots where you see both of them on screen at the same time. He's really far away, but he's just getting all these amazing, unbelievable headshots.
Yep.
And looking at Rick and feeling all the feels,
Yeah,
and then he does some
that
ugly Daryl crying at the end too.
Right, especially given the tussling we saw in the last episode, and
honestly,
all that.
Maggie should be standing there next to him, also like beating herself up because they have killed Rick. Right?
Yep, pretty much. And we do see like this all got leaked before this even hit the screens, or at least that's how I recall it. But because basically everybody figured out that there were some film deals going on. There's going to be supposedly 3 mini film deals with the Rick Grimes character. Yeah. Andrew Lincoln survives this. There's like the weird scene with Jadis and the helicopter, and she says she's got a B. So whatever that means, we don't know.
Like, I never had an A. I think she lured them in with the A and then switched it to Rick, who's a B.
Right.
And then they get into the helicopter with the biohazard symbol on it, which we've seen, well, because we watched these out of order. We're in season 5 or 4? 5, right?
Yep.
That was this last season of Fear the Walking Dead.
Yep.
With Althea and her new best friend. What's her name?
Yeah, I don't remember the friend's name. But in any case, they grab him up. I mean, I guess we have to assume that the A's and the B's at this point are something to do with morals and ethics, because Gabriel is apparently an A, because of the decision he was going to make to tell Rick.
I maintain that he could just be not on the chart.
Correct, but that's what she said, though, remember?
She said, all this time I thought you were a B. Mm-hmm. She doesn't actually say what he is. That's
all
I'm saying.
Okay. Sorry. I was recalling it incorrectly, I guess. But in any case, something to do with survival potentially. A fighter, if you will, is my guess, or was at this point. But anyway, like, we see him again, he's like kind of flying out of there, and it is weird to see him in modern technology and kind of like floating over everything. That was weird. You could also make some kind of like, maybe even to him, he thinks he's still dreaming, because wouldn't you at this point? I mean, this is pretty far beyond any of this being active, so that's kind of interesting. But, we've got the aftermath with the entire cast, and everybody's mourning him, and it's really, we see Michonne, and it's pretty heartbreaking. I thought it was very moving. I agree with you. I think it went on a bit too long.
Yeah, I agree with you too.
And then the very end, we do see that they basically show that time has passed, because we see Judith Grimes playing Little Sheriff, doing the exact same thing that Carl used to do that got him killed, bringing in a group of survivors. And we'll get to the character of Judith, I guess, in the next episode. But
we do get introduced to this handful of scrappy survivors.
Yep.
One of whom is played by, what's this dude's name? Who's the new people are Magna, Connie, Kelly, Yumiko, and Luke. The guy playing Luke is named Dan Fogler, and he's a comedian. He's a comic actor, or he's been in comedies, like, I feel like he's been in Modern Family, he's been in The Goldbergs, maybe not Modern Family, but I feel like that seems to...
but then
so here he is now in a zombie show, and
he was also in Fantastic Beasts, so he definitely made, but after this, I believe, so he's sort of been all over the place, so good for Dan Fogler.
Mm-hmm. The others are essentially, to me, unknowns, but we do have one person who is deaf and one person who is like, I don't know how much, like 80% deaf or something. She has like partial hearing loss. And so now we've introduced this element of American Sign Language into the show, and it's a pretty big deal to have.
It is a big deal, and I mean, we had a little bit of this, didn't we? In not quite the same thing, but in Black Summer, with like the disability of that they had a deaf character, correct?
Yes.
And
right.
you got to question how that person is going to survive just because they cannot hear walkers coming. So, I guess they would have to do it with the cooperation of other people in their group, and the other people in their group has to agree to keep them safe.
And the way that they do it in this show is by pairing up
Yep.
Two characters together, and those are, who is it? Lauren Ridloff, I think, and Angel Theory.
Yep.
And Angel Theory being her like interpreter in a way.
Yep.
Although almost everybody in this small group of survivors
Speak
seems to have
silently.
some ASL amongst them.
Right. And maybe they learned it because of their group member, so that's cool.
Yeah.
And so this definitely we're diving into the next, Who Are You Now episode. And so this is, they get us up to speed pretty quickly in that, we know that a lot of time has passed because of the age of Judith. And we see what's happened with the community, at least Alexandria. At first, when she's bringing this group back, there's definitely a lot of problems with bringing a new group of people in. That becomes pretty clear. And it's not hard to draw some parallels between, what used to happen with communities before. Like I think we all remember when the Michonne, Rick Grimes, Daryl crew had entered into a community and their weapons were taken. And
but usually they were scarier than the people whose community, well, at least certainly in the case of Alexandria, they were the scary ones, right?
Right.
In this case, the Alexandrians are still the scary ones.
Well, yeah, but you know what I'm saying. Like, there's like this parallel where it's like, okay, now we're the ones making the rules, and what are those rules going to be? And so anyway,
there's a lot not being said
right
about this level of distrust and things like, why, and people are like, yes, I know why, and then they show us this scar on Michonne's back by the end of the episode, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole untold story here,
right?
Which is, I think, it's a great setup. It's a cool way of being like, yeah, it's been 6 years, and guess what? It wasn't just like nothing happened. There were things that happened during this time.
Right, and we are also sort of led into tensions between the different communities, or at least a sort of a divide, because we have Carol at the kingdom. We've got the group at the hilltop, which we don't see Maggie, we just see Jesus, and we'll figure that out in a little bit.
We haven't seen anything from Hilltop, I feel like.
Well, we eventually do. I mean,
not in this episode.
Not in this episode. Sorry, I'm blending this one and the next one. But we do have discussions of it, and that there is some sort of cooperation between Hilltop and the Kingdom, because Carol is now with a sort of all grown up Henry. Henry's like teenage guy, full on teenager.
She seems to have settled into the role of queen.
Her hair's long.
Kingdom is a little bit weird because it's like the first few scenes, it's just like this, domestic bliss that people are carrying lumber and doing their exercises or whatever. It's always been like that a little bit. And then, but they also introduced this idea that, their pipes are breaking down, like the system is falling apart.
Yep.
So they talk about this fair that's coming up, which is kind of a new concept for this these settlements too.
Right, and in Alexandria, I mean, we have this whole, like, we have seen that there is now some sort of government in place. There's a council. They decide they're the ones who basically hear the argument that this new group should stay. There's a lot of rules. Michonne clearly is like head of security, clearly holds a lot of power, and she is the most suspicious of newcomers. Oh, yeah. And, it's, they ask sort of the similar questions that we've seen this group answer over and over again, or ask other people, like, how many people have they killed? What did they have to do to survive? There's a lot of things there to, like, just in how they are now enacting their own brand of government. And look, the community is clearly thriving in a way, like, to some extent. They've got, crops, there's a windmill. There is like there's definitely some like positive things about Alexandria, and they're protective of it, and you understand that it would be a risk to bring in a new community members, and Magna is not doing them any favors because she's like hiding weapons and but again, as I said, like this is not something that we've seen this, and in I think in the other episodes, like members of Rick's group would be like acting in the same way because they would feel defenseless. So it's an interesting thing to examine now that we're further on down the road. And we've got we've still got some baddies around, so it's not like everything is idyllic. And we see that when Carol takes Henry to she's on her way to take Henry to Hilltop. So it's like
Henry's been through some stuff, right?
Yeah.
Even when he was a little kid, he fought the Saviors.
Yep.
He's savvy. Why do you feel like they are okay with his character jumping into an ambush and not listening to Carol, who's like, wait? Like, I feel like this...
Yeah, this bothered me a little bit. And I actually, if we're going to talk about Henry, we can also talk about Judith. Both of them have become, at least in this episode, the things that I just annoy me the most about when they write for kids. Because when they write most successfully for kid characters, it's that they've been in this world forever. Judith isn't stupid or shouldn't be stupid, especially she's being raised by Michonne. I don't know that she would be carrying on the traits of Carl at this point because Judith doesn't know anything other than what this world is. She's lost her dad.
I feel like your argument here is that, yes, okay, she's making bad decisions based on what you would do, but this show doesn't allow this character to fail. She makes these bad decisions, but everything comes out real peachy for older Judith.
Correct, but I just think, I don't know, I don't find it to be, it doesn't feel real to me. It doesn't feel like this is a realistic thing.
Well, the thing is, when they were writing for Carl, they let him fail all the time. Like, he would get stuck in the mud with the zombie that he's throwing rocks at or whatever. Like, Carl wouldn't stay in the house and was kind of inept. Judith doesn't stay in the house, and she has been raised by a ninja warrior, and she's like a very formidable little survivor person,
True, but at least in this episode, she annoys the heck out of me.
Okay.
Or at least
I was taken with it. I thought, yeah, this is the character that this show has always been about. You saw all that when it was originally revealed that Judith was like grown up. Like she's been on this show from the beginning, one way or another, right? And this is what it's always been about. And now this is the culmination of The Walking Dead. And I think the writing is leading into that also. Young Henry, on the other hand, is not allowed the same sort of...
No.
Even though he's had the same youth and upbringing, not quite from a fetus, he makes a bad decision in this episode. Doesn't listen to his mother. And they pay for it. Right.
And she is so formidable, you would think that he's going to listen to her no matter what. But then again, I think they're trying to paint the teenage rebellion thing with him, and maybe that's part of why. Like, they're trying to paint... And look, he's been impulsive kind of all along.
Yes,
we've seen that.
He let all the saviors go during the Hilltop raid, that's for sure.
And now this is coming back. These are Jed and his merry band of...
And Regina and Jed has taken over. It is kind of interesting to see them at their lowest point. Yep. It must be.
And so basically Carol gives them everything that they have asked for, including her wedding ring, which, I mean, look, when this happened, I'm like, oh, dude, this is not going to end well for you. And Henry yells at Carol like she didn't stand up and whatever. And of course, what is she going to do in that moment? And everybody, and this should include Henry, by the way, everybody who knows anything about Carol knows that she doesn't need to take action immediately. She will always feign some level of passivity and then turn around and destroy everything. And I do mean everything.
Yeah. So, it is pretty noteworthy that Jed is like, you let me live once, so I'm going to return the favor. This is actually quite magnanimous for a former savior, and Jed has never shown a decent side in any of the other scenes we've seen him in. So it's quite, I mean, Regina has been decent on this show, but she's basically mute. I don't feel like she even talks.
She didn't.
Other than to say like, "Oh, we've got you now" or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty noteworthy that Jed is like, "Yeah, you're cool. We're cool now. I'm just gonna take your stuff, but no hard feelings." Little does he know, of course, even though he's been basically beaten by Carol in 3 different ways already, and he's only been on the show for like 5 episodes.
Right. But that's the thing. I think if he had just left it at the supplies and whatever, maybe she would have let him get away, though probably not. But the ring was the big deal. And it's kind of interesting because she was so reluctant to put the ring on in the first place. But this, I think, shows a little bit more about where Carol is at this point.
Yeah.
And she waits till Henry's asleep, and she basically goes and makes sure that they know that it's her and that is going to destroy them. And she destroys them. She burns their entire camp and them to the ground. It's, very much like, I think it was an excellent little illustration that Carol is still Carol. No matter how long her hair has gotten.
Yep.
So I thought that was pretty awesome, quite honestly.
It was a great little side arc for sure.
Yeah.
And what it does is also puts to bed the saviors. They're gone now. There's still 1 or 2 of them in Alexandria. Laura is apparently on the council, the blonde lady with the neck tattoo.
Yep.
DJ, who was one of the rabble rousers in the bridge camp, is now one of their main body heavy guard guys. So he's there. He's the one with the beard and the longer hair.
Yep.
Two recognizable saviors are still on the show, and I think that's it really. Oh,
yep.
Austin, the nice Massachusetts guy.
Yep. But yeah, that's it, and they're done. And then we've also got, if we're talking about the saviors, we have to talk about Negan. And that is, Negan's still like a prisoner. He is a little bit less, Negan-like here.
He's all sunshine and rainbows compared with last season.
Yep. He's definitely a little bit more of a kinder, gentler Negan, at least from what we see.
We also forgot to talk about the scene between him and Maggie in the last episode. I
sorry. I guess that was a key thing, but
it's pretty key.
It is key in that, part of why Rick ends up dying is because, Maggie's on her vengeance thing, and that's why Rick is where he is, and she wants to go and kill Negan. Negan is in the cell in Alexandria. Maggie basically storms into Alexandria, gets met by Michonne, and then basically says to Michonne, if anything were to happen to Rick, what would you do? And Michonne basically gets out of the way because there's nothing that she can do to help. And can't
staying in the way just means she's going to end up killing her friend as opposed to Negan.
And she doesn't want to.
At the end of the day.
And basically Maggie is met with a Negan who is just absolutely broken and wants to die and is suffering because he is in the prison and decides to just let him live.
And you know who gets the credit for this is basically Michonne. Like, it was that episode where he was doing the back and forth with her.
Yep.
But she eventually was like, you're never getting out of here. Or I forget exactly the logic she used to beat him.
Yeah.
But he went from being super antagonistic to now he's just like, oh, I've had enough. Right. And then fast forward 6 years into the future, and now he's basically like Judith's tutor.
Yes. Doing his thing. And, there's, we see, like, so we're revisiting all these characters. Carol and Henry go and visit Daryl, who's like super weird with his dog and like just kind of
we don't get into that episode. That's the next episode. We do see him, but that's about it. It's like, hey, do you want to ride? And that's it. He just smiles. He doesn't have any lines in this episode.
Well, we
don't meet Dog. We don't meet Dog in this episode either.
Doesn't he have the dog with him in this? Maybe I'm blending him. But he's carrying stuff. He looks like, he looks like a hobbit or like something.
There was a quick flash of a scene of him waking up in a tent that had lots of holes in it too. Like,
like he's not living a very robust. I mean, he's living a very like
Daryl
life. Here.
Eating squirrels again,
Yeah.
I assume he's eating squirrels. I don't know.
I think he's eating everything out there. But so this is
Rosita and Eugene have their mission to go and put a repeater out on a water tower or something. I feel like is it Gabriel's idea because he's looking at a radio. He's also smooching on Rosita. Like, where'd this come from?
Yep.
Gabriel all of a sudden is getting around like Mr. Man of the Camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Rosita and Eugene go on this mission to put this repeater up, and that's kind of what introduces what we might say is the new baddie faction.
Yep. The Whisperers. And it is like, and we also see a new Eugene, because up until this point we have not really seen him fighting, and he is now like very much like fearless. He's still Eugene. He still says his weird stuff, but he is out there helping. He is using his all the tools in his toolbox to help out stuff. He definitely like. Does he and Ian Rosita, like the way the walkers are acting is very strange. So this is something that's introduced in this episode, is that they're not doing what we have now sort of taken for granted, or what the group has taken for granted as their normal behavior. So and what that means is that the herd was all going in one direction, and unless there's something else that happens, usually they just keep going in that direction. So Rosita and Eugene thought they were safe, and then the herd basically comes and kind of surrounds them. Which is, brings us into, I guess, lead into the next episode, where we should probably leave it.
Yeah, Rosita, their horses spook and run away, very much unlike the Rick's white horse. But I'm just like, that's kind of a rookie move, Rosita, just tie them up.
Yeah.
First of all, how'd they get off your wagon?
Right.
Like, there's a few things go wrong for them here,
yep.
But those things that go wrong allow them to have to hide next to the road and overhear the Whisperers talking to one another, which that shot of Eugene's face is just beautiful.
Yeah, it's so great. He's so freaked out.
It's definitely old, scared Eugene all of a sudden again. He's beside himself with fear.
Well, and look, it's a kind of good idea, because like the idea that the walkers could have evolved and are now communicating, and this is like a totally new ball game. That like, especially if you're in the position of him and Rosita, where they have basically been running from them. His leg is hurt. And now, like, it seems as if the walkers have a game plan, like a strategic game plan. That has to be absolutely terrifying. And so I thought that was a very cool add-in and a cool intro to this group. So in any case, despite some of the sort of long goodbye of Rick Grimes, I did thoroughly enjoy both of these episodes. I thought they were fantastic.
Yeah, it was good. We're definitely in a new world, and that's cool. That's exciting, and
it is, and new blood.
More good job, Angela Kang.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And this is this is the other thing, is that I did feel like when they introduced this new group, they successfully did it without like an enormous amount of, you're finding stuff out and you find out stuff about them as the season goes on. But in terms of introduction, I felt like they did a really great job at just kind of like putting them in, both learning about the group, but also learning about what's going on in the communities with this vehicle of introducing them to Alexandria. So I was pretty impressed with how this all came together.
Mm-hmm. I concur. It's also, I think we might have talked about it before on the podcast, but now it makes sense too because he's on the show. But Matt Linz is playing older Henry.
Yep.
And I see Sophia in his face all the time, but possibly because I know that he's that actress's brother.
Yeah.
So they've had the three Linz kids playing Sophia and Henry and Henry.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
little Henry was played by Matt's little brother, Maxon. Yep. It's just kind of crazy. You're a little worried about this family, but also like that's cool continuity.
They're the coolest family ever. I don't know.
And to have Carol be surrogate mother and actual mother, to these
cool.
three siblings is really kind of like it plays on a meta level, right? So it's kind of cool.
Yep, I kind of liked it. So anyway, I think I'm excited to talk about the next couple of episodes. And any other thing to add about this?
No, I think we're good. Let's get back together next time and talk about what is it going to be? Episodes 7 and 8 for
Yep.
this. I think that will take us to the mid-season finale.
That will.
Typically.
Even though it feels like so many of these felt like mid-season finales, didn't they?
Yeah.
So,
For
but
sure.
that's a good sign. That's definitely a good sign.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
They've totally messed with the paradigm.
Yep.
So join us next time, and we're going to also be on Twitter at ReanimatedPcast. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or our website. Show notes are located at reanimatedpodcast.com.
and until next time, ciao, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for living.
Thanks for living in.
Bye-bye.
Bye.